Hey there, Coach Goo here, and just realized if you're not in class to actually get the notes when I did them in person, well, since there's no actual notes page and there's no video, you wouldn't actually be able to get the notes. So that's AWK awkward. So we're doing a little bit of a non-official notes video right here. So there's no notes page, like I said, so you gotta get out something to write these notes on. And after you watch this video, everything on that first assignment will just make sense to you. Alright, so we're going to title this page Factoring Basic Quadratic Functions, okay? So what's a quadratic function? Now remember, we had linear functions, that's of the form y equals mx plus b. You don't need to write this down. But we're doing quadratic functions. What is a quadratic function? Well, for example, a quadratic function is going to be something like f of x, that's an f, my cursive f of x, which means the function of x, equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. Now, it's a quadratic function. Write this down. This is our example we're going to be using. Our quadratic function, you can tell it's quadratic because it's got x squared. That squared, the little power to the 2, tells me that this is a quadratic function. All right? So, just like we had standard form for a linear equation, we had y equals mx plus b, we have standard form for a quadratic function as well, standard form. And our standard form is going to be f of x equals a, this is very important, a x squared plus b x plus c. All right. Now a and b here, a and b, but the burp, and b are called coefficients. Coefficients. Some people say c is a coefficient as well, but technically a coefficient is the number that's in front of x squared, or the number in front of x. You see, c is just a number, so technically that's a constant. But some people call that a coefficient as well. Anyways, a and b are called coefficients. So sometimes you'll hear, what is the coefficient of x squared? What's the coefficient of x? So it's good that we know that vocabulary. Now, seeing the standard form is f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. With every quadratic function, we should be able to identify a, b, and c. So with our example over here, the x squared plus 6x plus 5, let's see if we can find a, b, and c. So a, b, and c. Now a is the value in front of x squared. It's not x squared, it's just the number in front of x squared. Do you see a number in front of this x squared? No, you don't, which means there's an invisible 1 right here. Because a 1 times anything, it's itself. All right, it's not a 0, or else there wouldn't be anything there. If there's nothing in front of that x squared or x, it's going to be 1. So our a is 1. Now, what is our b? B is the number in front of x. So our b is 6. And what is c? C is just our number at the very end, which is 5. You see that? Just like our standard form shows. That's how you'd find a, b, and c. So let's just do one more example to make sure you know and I know that you know what we're talking about. So let's do f of x equals, I'm just making something up here, 2x squared plus 14x minus 16. Now, what is a here? Is going to be 2 right here, from the right there. That's a 2. A equals 2. What is b here? Is 14. And then what is c? It is negative 16. You need to include the sign. So negative 16. Okay, make sure you have all that written down. So I'm about to wipe the page. Bam, gone. Okay, so now let me show you something here. You don't need to write this part down, but look at this. For our example equation, we had x squared plus 6x plus 5. Well, you guys know how, you should know how to solve when you have something like 3x plus 5 equals 0. You subtract 5 from both sides, then you divide by 3, and you'd have your answer. But Do you know how to solve for x when you have a quadratic function such as this? Maybe not. So this is what we need to do. Obviously, we can't work with this, but when we factor it out like this, now here's the problem. Here's the problem. Back in the day, this is going to help you appreciate what we're doing here. Back in the day, you had to just guess how to factor it out. Like I could look at this and pretty much guess, okay, it's x, the answer is x plus 5 times x plus 1. Then you'd have to check yourself by multiplying the first two values. So what's x times x? That is x squared. Then you have to multiply the outside values. This is foiling. X times 1. What's x times 1? That's x, so plus x. Then you have to multiply the inside values. 5 times x. What is 5 times x? That's 5x, so plus 5x. And then lastly, you'd have to multiply the last values. That's 5 times 1. What is 5 times 1? That's 5. Now, when I combine my like terms in this equation I just wrote, I would have x squared plus 6x plus 5. And you can see this equals the original equation. So I would know that, yeah, I factored it right. Good job. Yay. So now that seems kind of out of nowhere, but the process that we use today, you do the same thing every time and it gives you the definite answer. Okay, there's no guesswork involved, because if I messed up doing it like this, I'd have to start all over and just check myself again, which is pretty annoying. So looking at this, how am I actually going to solve for x here though? What you want to do is after you factor it out, I'm showing you the goal here, what we're going to be able to do. After I have factored out my equation to x plus 5 times x plus 1, I'm going to set it equal to 0. And I want something that's going to make this statement true. Well, if either of the things inside the parentheses equals 0, then the whole thing would be 0, right? Because 0 times anything is 0. So let's take a look at how we could do that. If I took x plus 5, you're going to look inside the parentheses. What's inside one of my parentheses? X plus 5. So let's take x plus 5. Set that equal to 0 and then solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Then x equals negative 5. Now this is one of our solutions. Why? Because if I plugged in x, negative 5 for x in this first parentheses, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. And then 0 times, who cares what the other one is, it equals 0. So that is one of our solutions. Also though, you can't, okay. Also, what other parentheses do we have? We got this one, x plus 1. Let's set this equal to 0 as well. X plus 1 equals 0. Subtract 1 from both sides, and x equals negative 1. This is also a solution because if I plugged in negative 1 for x into this parentheses, negative 1 plus 1 is 0. And once again, that would make this statement true because 0 times anything is 0. Now you can see we do have two solutions here. And why is that possible? Because this is a quadratic function. This little 2 right here tells us up to how many solutions we can have. Because it's a 2, we can have up to 2 solutions. Normally when we had y equals mx plus b, look, y equals mx plus b, our highest exponent right here is 1 on x. That means there's only one solution. There's only one place that the line crosses the x-axis. So anyways, that's that. But anyways, let's get to now how we were actually going to solve this. So as you can see, we need to get our equation into this factored form right here in order to solve for the x. So now what I'm about to show you is our method for doing this instead of guessing. Alright, so now this is actually very revolutionary. This is called the Xbox method, and it's almost just as fun as playing actual Xbox, almost. So what you're going to do first, this is the same process every single time. Look at your equation. We're going to use this equation, so now write this stuff down. This is the good stuff right here. F of x equals x squared plus 6x plus 5. The very first thing you want to do is find your a, b, and c. So we're going to label a. What is a here? It's 1. It's that invisible number in front of x squared. What is b here? It's the 6. We've already done this with our example earlier. And what is c? It's 5. All right, now I'm leaving my answer right here over here because just reference. But let's continue on. So after you found a, b, and c, you're going to draw the x box, or the x thing right here. Boom. And we're going to fill in the spaces that we do know. In the top space, it's always going to be a, oh gosh, wrong color. It's It's always going to be A times C. So in this case, what is it? We've got 5 times 1, or 1 times 5. So 1 times 5, and that equals 5. So our top space value is 5, okay? Now, in the bottom space, it's going to be B. What is our B value? It's 6. And then, wow, look at this. It looks exactly like that warm-up activity we were doing where we found two numbers that multiply to give me 5 and add to give me 6. So you're going to find two numbers that multiply to give you the top number and add up to give you the bottom number. So you're just going to look for factors of 5. There's actually only two. It's just 1 and 5. 1 and 5. So 1 times 5 equals 5. And 1 plus 5 equals 6. So that is my answer. So 1 and 5. All right. Now we're almost done here. Remember, we need to get our original equation, this one up here, into a factored form, which means the parentheses. So we can see that it's x squared, right? Oh, gosh. X squared. So that means we can assume that our first term in each of these parentheses is going to be an x. So you're going to go ahead and write the x at the beginning of each parentheses. We just need to know what's going to go after the x in each of these parentheses. But we already found out when we wrote the 1 over here and the 5 over here, that let us know what goes in the rest of the parentheses. So we have a positive 1 right here, right? So in one of my parentheses, I'm going to put plus 1. And we have a positive 5 in our other side. So in the other parentheses, we're going to put plus 5. And now our factored form for this polynomial is x plus 1 times x plus 5. As you can see, that's the exact same thing I got up here in the first place. So I know I'm right. Okay? So now we want to solve for x. This is the end goal here. So we're going to put this equal to 0. And then we're going to take each separate parentheses and set it equal to 0. So first, x plus 1, set that equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. And x equals negative 1. That's one of my answers. Next, x plus 5 equals 0, because that's my other parentheses. Subtract 5 from both sides, and x equals negative 5. That's my other answer. So circle both your answers. Let's do one more example. So write this down. We got f of x equals x squared plus 3x minus 28. What's the first thing that we want to do? Get our a, b, and c. A is 1. That's the number in front of the x squared. B, this time, is 3. And c is negative 28. So now we're going to draw the x. There it is. And fill in our blanks. The top is going to be a times c. So in this case, what is it going to be? It's going to be negative 28. And in our bottom spot, it's going to be b, which in this case is 3. Now we need to find two numbers that multiply to give me the top number and add together to give me the bottom number. We can see the top number is a negative, which immediately lets us know we're going to have one positive and one negative number. And if you're not good at finding the factors, what you should do is just find all the numbers that multiply to give you positive 28. So watch this. 1 and 28, 2 and 14, not 3, and then 4 and 7. And it looks like that's it. Now I'm going to double these up because I've got a negative. So 1 and 28, 2 and 14, 4 and 7. And in one of these rows, I'm going to put pluses on all of them. Plus, 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 minus, minus, and minus. Because 1 times negative 28 is negative 28. But then in the other column, I'm going to switch them around. So I'm going to put negative, 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 positive, positive, positive. Now, look for one of these pairs that adds up to equal the bottom number. And that is going to be the one that you use. Those are going to be the numbers you use. I can see that pair is right here because negative 4 plus 7 is positive 3, which fits my X box. So I'm going to put negative 4 and 7 over here. That's just a way to find the factors if you're not good at finding them. Okay, and now we're going to write our factored form. So we're going to put in parentheses. This is one of the most important parts. You need to know how to write the factored form. In parentheses, we're going to start with our x's, right? And then in one of them, we're going to put minus 4 because we've got minus 4 right here. And the other one, we're going to put plus 7 because we've got a positive 7 right here. And that is my factored form. And if we want to solve for x, we set this equal to 0. Take 1 in the parentheses, set it equal to 0. So x minus 4 equals 0. Add 4 to both sides. X equals 4. That's one of my answers. Other one, x plus 7 equals 0. Subtract 7 from both sides. And x equals negative 7. And that's my other answer. So you're always going to have, usually you'll have two answers, but sometimes it's a little different. But that's all there is to factoring basic quadratic functions, and you should be able to do that worksheet on your own now, guys. So with that, this is not official, so see you in the next one.